In this episode, we have Jeff Leonard, president of CrowWorks. He shares his journey through the supply chain industry, highlighting the importance of operations and finance in building a successful business. He has an extensive finance background, which I found interesting as well. He discusses the unique challenges faced by CrowWorks, including customization for clients, the impact COVID-19 had on the restaurant industry, and the significance of trade shows in their marketing strategy. Jeff emphasizes the company's commitment to customer service and building strong relationships with clients, while also looking at the future trends and challenges in the supply chain sector. All right, let's get into it.
You're listening to Supply Chain Unlocked. Get exclusive insights from industry leaders on overcoming challenges, mastering logistics, and scaling your business with precision. Brought to you by X7 AI.
Welcome to Supply Chain Unlocked. I have Jeff Leonard here with CrowWorks. I got highly interested in their company and to have them on this podcast because he has a supply chain background, finance, and he's now the president. He'll tweak me in a minute if any of that's inaccurate. So I'll start down with the question, Jeff. What compelled you to talk to us about telling your story, et cetera?
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing is pretty interesting. The supply chain world is fast moving and a little bit confusing. So I think just getting the story out of you're not in this alone. Everybody's having the trouble that you're having. And we can work together to find solutions.
Oh, and then how did you get your start? I know you graduated from college, BS, BA, if you will, just like I did, business administration. Where'd you get started and how have you made it up to the president ranks in supply chain as well?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest parts of my career was before I graduated from college. My father was a director of operations for a glue factory. And as soon as the end of football season, my senior year of high school, he got me a job driving a forklift, loading trucks and picking orders. Worked in a glue factory for about 6 years. As I was finishing high school, going through college, I happened to be on the 5-year strategy for a college graduation to get my bachelor's degree. So got a bonus year of working in the factory. So I did a lot of stuff with driving a forklift, loading trucks, but was able to get into a supervisory role where I was doing a little bit more work with forecasting and managing a union workforce, which was a cool learning experience. So I was 23 years old with a bachelor's degree and almost 6 years of operational experience, which put me a little bit ahead of some of my peers who were just graduating with a degree or had been working in a factory for 6 years with no college. So I had that little step up. And, back in the early 2000s, I don't want to age myself as you have, Teddy.
Hey, we weren't recording.
Back in the early 2000s, I actually found a job, this is going to sound crazy, on Craigslist. So on Craigslist, there was a little startup company in Johnstown, Ohio, which was about 45 minutes north of my house, looking for an inventory supervisor. And I applied for it on Craigslist by emailing my resume to a random dude on Craigslist, and happened to be a legitimate company that was just starting up. And back then you paid for posting jobs on all the job boards. So Craigslist was free. So you could post on Craigslist and get applicants. So I met that company, 31 Gifts, which is a direct selling company. They sold purses and wallets in home. So they would have an in-home party, and a friend of a friend would come over with her demo kit and show you a bunch of purses. I know I don't come across as a purse guy myself, but I have a closet full of purses at my house, and my wife enjoys having that option. So I worked at the purse factory for about 6 years as well, and that really was groundbreaking for my career. So I started in inventory supervision, moved into inventory and merchandise planning, moved into finance, moved into supply chain, moved into operations. And one of the cool things about that company, because it was so small, everyone did everything. So I did a little bit of all kinds of stuff, but that company grew from a kind of out of the founder's basement to a $750 million company in the 6 years that I was there. So I got to see a scrappy little startup company, I got to see nearly $1 billion massive business as well. That company, they call that industry the bottle rocket industry, the direct selling industry. So once everybody has a purse, you don't really need another one. So they started scaling back and laying off. And I saw the writing on the wall and was able to find a new gig at Boar's Head. Boar's Head is, you're probably familiar with them. They're a pretty big brand, deli meats and cheeses. You can find them at Kroger, Harris Teeter, those guys. I started there as the finance manager. And then after about 2 years, I moved into a plant manager role where I managed all of distribution through North America and international. So I had a staff of about 300 people, and I had 3 different facilities that I operated, one in Groveport, Ohio, and then 2 over in Newcastle, Indiana, which is just a little bit east of Indianapolis. Really, that business taught me a lot about logistics and supply chain. We were buying cheeses from Italy. We were buying, sausages and those kind of things from Italy, but we were also manufacturing a lot of stuff. And that's part of supply chain that some people don't realize is part of supply chain. Is part of your supply chain is what you manufacture. And other parts are what you are purchasing from somebody else. A lot of times, if you're not in supply chain like you are, you see that as 2 different organizations. You see, we have a manufacturing group and we have a supply chain group where really they're intertwined. They're the same thing. Here at CrowWorks, we actually talk about our manufacturing company, which is our company. It's just a department, but we call our manufacturing group a supplier in supply chain. So our supply chain team references our manufacturing partner, which is ourself, as well as the people that we buy raw materials from, the people that we buy metal from, the people we buy nuts and bolts and screws and glue. All of that is supply chain, but even our own manufacturing is part of our supply chain.
That's interesting you say that, because that's really a holistic business model, as opposed to, you sort of flipped it on its head, right? So
Right.
often it's a manufacturing company, that was your point a lot of times, and supply chain is just a function of the company. And now you're looking at it as really you're a supply chain company with a department or a function within that as a manufacturer.
Exactly.
I'm glad you said it, or I think it's interesting you said it, because I was reading pretty quick through your website, but that didn't like jump out to me. But now that you said that, that's exactly what you convey in your copy there.
Yeah. So at CrowWorks, our focus is wood components. So we make primarily furniture, tables, chairs. Some of our biggest clients are Wendy's, Qdoba, Panera Bread. You've probably sat in some of our furniture at some point in your life. You've probably eaten off of a table that's been in my plant.
Really?
But we do the wood components. So the base that table sits on, that's part of supply chain. We found a metal fabricator to produce that base. And we found a lumber mill to supply us with raw lumber that we're milling down, cutting to size, gluing together, finishing. So we've really got both components at CrowWorks, where there's a strong supply chain and a strong manufacturing.
Before I forget this was another, I guess that's why I won't say I'm a great like podcaster, but I'm highly curious. So I keep conversations going, I guess. CrowWorks, where did that gosh darn name come from?
If you would have asked me that a month ago, I would have said, I don't know. It's funny enough, we had a potential client, Chiba Hut, come in and they asked our founders. So our founders have been in business for 30 years, and they asked the founders, where did CrowWorks come from? So it's funny, our founders owned a retail store, and their logo was a bird. And it was just a bird kind of holding a branch in its mouth. They thought that it was a really cool concept that Lockheed Martin used called Skunk Works. So Lockheed Martin, they produce things for the U.S. government, including like stealth bombers and those kind of things, but they want to keep it secret. So they call this part of their company Skunk Works. So no one really knows what they do or how they do it. And our founders thought that was a cool thing. So they wanted to use the concept of works. in our name. And they had this bird. So they went back to their marketing design company and said, what can we call this thing? We have this bird. And they're like, well, all the cool birds are taken by professional sports team. You can't be Eagles or Cardinals or Blue Jays or Ravens. Nobody has Crow. Do you guys want to be Crowworks? They're like, oh, I like that. I like Crowworks. They started Crowworks back in 2012 as a spinoff from the retail store.
Sorry, I knew I saw a dang crow in this website. As you're explaining it, I'm going, I'm going to find that. I kept that clean for a second.
Yeah, it was close.
It still made the expression. But anyways, no, that's interesting because I just was so stuck on the word crow. But anyways, I'll get off of that. So I think a big thing for your career or to acknowledge is you started out well before college because you said like 2001-ish for that Craigslist job.
Yeah.
I joke with you and call it the purse job. No, horrible. Everybody will get that. It's just funny. All right. So yeah, I mean, you've been around for what, 25, basically 25 years, and you
Yeah.
got started and entrenched in your career and stuck with it well before you finished college.
Yeah. So to me, like operations feels like common sense. My dad did it. My uncle is in third-party logistics. My grandfather's, one of them was a truck driver. The other one worked at a power company. These guys are operators. And so to me, it's like operations makes total sense. But I think one of the keys to my career has been learning something that's not common sense, and that's finance and finance management and understanding FP&A. And really, when you put operations and finance together, that's where you can start to be dangerous in terms of building a company, building a career, because you have to understand how both of those things work to really understand how everything works.
That's a very good point. I come from a IT and then more 25 years now in project and program management. And especially when you get to the program level, I shouldn't even call it level. It's an area. You deal so much with operations and finance, and you realize how those things really have to gel. And I'm not going to say they're the total heart of the company, but if those two aren't working well together, and you got good relationships between the executives and then the mid-level management, you got problems. So
Yep, you're 100% right.
I see where you're coming from there. Pain point. Well, let me. How big is Crowworks? Revenue or employees, whatever you're comfortable with citing.
Yeah, so we've got about 50 employees right now, 52. We do a lot of outsourcing with some of those components. So we probably feel and look bigger than we are, but it's because we've got so many great partners that help us build up a good brand. We are a private company, so we don't share a lot of our financial stuff. But yeah, 52 employees. We've got a pretty solid book of business. Like I said, Starbucks, Wendy's, Qdoba, Panera, Chiba Hut, I just mentioned, is another potential customer coming up down the road. So we're in a lot of places, and we're looking to expand even outside of the restaurant industry into hotels, education, like college cafeterias and lobbies, and I guess like a student union kind of thing. So we're big and growing.
Yeah, well, I find that with a lot of companies that have a holistic supply chain strategy or model. Generally speaking, there's a lot outsourced. It's less employees, a lot more outsourcing. And that's nothing new for the last 15, 20 years, frankly. It's just who's got on board and who can do that. There's a company, I always screw up their name. I was interviewing him. I couldn't remember his name. Uh, Embroidery. He's
Hmm.
grown that company from like 4 million to 20 million in 5 years. And he comes from a 3PL background.
Hmm.
And previous to that, nobody really looked at it as, well, let me put it this way. He came in and re-engineered the whole company into a holistic supply chain. In fact, they even term their marketing function as a supply chain. When they look at
Oh,
customers and customers as opposed to clients, I don't need to get off on a tangent, but I see a lot of parallels as I go here. So Pain points. Where do you see pain points right now, or bottlenecks, whatever term you want to look at it? And a lot of times it starts with the marketing area of the business, onboarding new clients, especially if your supply chain is the way it is, rolling it into manufacturing, and then getting it out to a restaurant in this case.
Yeah.
Are
So
there
I,
pain points, and how are you addressing them?
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a business that doesn't have pain points. So we've got quite a few. One of them, and I'm sure that you being in IT have seen this before, but we've got a out of the box ERP system. So order entry, item creation, those types of things take a lot of time. When you work in our industry, you don't walk into a restaurant and say, "Hey, this is Crowworks furniture." Because the furniture that we put into Wendy's looks different than the furniture we put into Panera. And that furniture looks different than the furniture we put into Starbucks. And that furniture looks different than the furniture we'll put into Ohio State Student Union. So we make every customer has its own item setup. So every time we get a new customer, we are entering the customer into our ERP and putting their, pay information and routing numbers and all that kind of administrative stuff. But then we also have to create every single chair, dining, bar height, counter height, every table, every base, every size of table, every booth, every
Nice.
fabric. So creating items in our ERP system is a pretty cumbersome process. Outside of that, the next step is procuring those items. So we have clients that they don't want the standard table base. They want a unique item. Like, for example, there's a lot of Wendy's stores will have a large metal U holding up one end of a table.
Oh, really?
Yes, that U base, obviously we're not selling a W base to
Everybody.
every, right. We're selling it to Wendy's. So going out and procuring that, obviously it's not a challenge for us now. We've been doing business with Wendy's for years, but going out and finding that unique item for clients, that's another, not pain point, but it's another time consuming effort for our supply chain team. And the part of our supply chain is the sourcing, is going out to find that unique item for, a one-off store. We have one of our customers is putting one of their cafes into a college. Well, in this one specific store, they want a bookshelf. And they want to put books on it and have that part of their decor. We don't make bookshelves. We don't have any suppliers that make, but we've never sold a bookshelf. So we've got to find a way to procure and source a bookshelf. And we have to find a supplier that will make us one and probably never make us a second one. So that kind of struggle of, I have to go set up a new supplier, a new partner to make an item, knowing that it's not a repeat customer. We're just going to go buy one of these from you. So that's another kind of pain point, struggle, time-consuming effort in our supply chain.
Thank you. So, I mean, you're highly customizable if you need to, and probably every time you walk into, like, start working with Starbucks or a new client, to your point, they have a bunch of new things that are custom to you
Mm-hmm.
because it has to fit their brand, right?
Exactly.
And they have to go through, and they're probably going through a rebranding process where they engaged you, or they're coming back to you and saying, we're rebranding, and you're off to the races again.
Yep. And our mission is to build what our clients need, which is a pretty bold mission, but also incredibly wide. And if your client needs a bookshelf, you build them a bookshelf. We hope they want tables and chairs because we're really good at that. But if they want a chandelier, I guess we go find one.
Yeah, well, then you want to be as much of a full solution to them, right? So you'll do those one-offs. And then, of course, they only need, one bookshelf per restaurant. I'm just throwing things out there. So
Exactly.
you got to get creative.
Yes. And that's a big part of our supply chain or our sourcing strategy and really our sales strategy is thinking outside the box and being creative, be that one-stop shop. The worst thing that we could do is tell a client, we don't do that. Then they're going to look for somebody that does. So part of our supply chain is actually keeping our clients by being the people that say, yes, we can do that.
Yeah, because you're offloading all that extra one-off stuff, and You got the solution, the creativity, and you're willing to go that extra mile. And then, of course, you get the higher volume orders that you're really, really good at. So
Yes.
that makes sense there. Not to get off on a tangent here. Are you doing anything with AI to get some type of efficiencies in this ERP, setting up SKUs, setting up drawings? I'm going a little too far there, but to handle these customizations.
I wish we were. So that is actually a pretty big effort for us in 2026 is how do we leverage AI? I think what a lot of companies or a lot of people do is I don't know about AI, so I'm just going to start a Chat GPT account. I don't know about AI, so I'm going to pay for Grok. I don't know about AI, so I'm going to do nothing. I want to make sure that CrowWorks doesn't do those three things. Now, maybe we do OpenAI or a Grok or something to help us get started. But we have heard through the grapevine that SolidWorks, which is the program that we use to do our 2D and 3D renderings, is working on an AI tool that can help turn a 2D into a 3D in seconds, where today it takes one of our engineers half a day. So that's something that we're exploring, and I wish I knew more about it. But like I said, we're a pretty lean, small company, and it's definitely something that if we don't do it, the industry is going to pass us by.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is here's what I find a lot with the AI conversation, and I don't want to dwell on it. People want to talk about it, but they still don't know what it is or how to talk about it. Those two things.
Yep.
And,
I'm
and,
one of those
and
people.
yeah, no, most business owners are. Sorry, I said the guy's name wrong. His name's Daniel Frank. He's in Reno, Nevada. And he wasn't afraid to talk about it. He was just trying to, where are we going with this? Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into this because I went through the whole mobility or mobile things on projects. And then BI was a big deal and big data.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about was just get in and start talking to it. Quit typing. Just talk to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like take chat, for instance. Just get in there and talk to it. I'll give you an excellent example that I did yesterday because I love to talk about it, but in realistic terms. So there's an issue in the RV resort here, and the general manager I've gotten to know really well. And somebody hooked up their RV and it blew out some electronics in there. And she doesn't know totally how to deal with it. And we've been doing this full time for 3 years. And I said, why don't you ask Chat? She goes, who's Chat? She thought I said Chad. Anyways, and I said, well, just be quiet. So I said to Chat GBT, I said, hey, I own a campground and they hooked up. They hooked up to the pedestal. It blew out a bunch of items and electronics within their RV. What's my legal liabilities? What's precedence? Is there negligence? I'll ask more questions after you start feeding it. And the point was, it spewed out all this stuff. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just a conversation back and forth between me and Chat. I just say Chat.
Yeah.
And she is sitting there amazed. And I said, Becky, this is all you do that is what AI is. It's like having a bunch of assistants and you just keep talking to it and it'll ask you so many freaking questions you get pissed off.
Yeah. Well, and that's what they call it a learning module, right? So it's trying to learn. That's why it's asking the questions, but it's also learning from the other millions of users that are asking it the same questions.
Yeah. So once you start using it, your mind just gets into it. Like my wife had to write some letters for my VA stuff or VA claims this weekend. Her and I would have put that off for weeks. She sat down and had 8 letters written for me, very professional, what the VA is looking for, and bam, she was done in about 35 minutes, 8 letters. I gave it to our consultant, and she was like, "These are sweet. She
It's amazing.
must be a really good writer." I said, "She's really good at asking Chat." Well, here's where I talk about it or I get excited about it, or I've always gotten excited about it. To your point, it's a learning model. That's really what it is. It's like working with a bunch of humans. It's like working with a whole nother team. And when it comes to a bunch of customization and et cetera, it starts learning patterns that the humans aren't even picking up with when they're
Yeah.
putting in inventory, when they're doing things like that, that it starts getting ahead of that person and saying, that drawing's a little bit different than the other. There's a nuance, and you may want to do a smart part number or a WID part number as you go. Anyways, I'll get off my little soapbox there, but I always find it really cool that, find it exciting that you're already talking to your vendors about changing stuff from 2D to 3D, et cetera, like you said for SolidWorks,
Hmm.
and you're starting to push down to make a culture of it. So go ahead and use chat. Why have you asked chat before you ask me?
Yeah,
Those
that's,
kinds of things.
I don't know if you know Dan Martell or if you've heard that name. That's one of the things he talks about in his YouTube videos is when his team comes to him and asks him a question, his first response is always, have you already plugged it into ChatGPT? If you haven't, go do that. And then if you have a real question, come back.
Yeah, they use definitely part of my subscriptions.
Yeah,
And if I had my Kindle, you'll see his latest book is on my Kindle.
that's great. I haven't read his new one yet.
Yeah, it's all about buying back your time so you can do the high value stuff in your business. Um, any other bottlenecks that come to, or just as a good thought?
Yeah. So another thing that I guess we have physical bottlenecks in our operation. So we've got a 100,000 square foot facility. Right now, we're working on a pretty big order for another national restaurant account. And it was high urgency. We want it before the end of the year. Can you do it? So what that does is it puts us into a capacity constraint of, when you're making a table, when you're working with natural product, you have to sand wood. Well, we've got, a vacuum station that sucks all the sawdust in. Well, we've only got 5 of them. So no, I can make 1,000 tables, but I can only sand them 5 at a time. So those kind of bottlenecks happen in our manufacturing plant. So, you can't even throw more bodies at it, which is what you'll hear when you talk to manufacturing or third-party logistics or distribution companies is you just get more manpower and knock it down. You go hire temps, you plug them in where the bottleneck is, and, the push-pull, you put them on the side of the pole and you break through, and that's how you get through the bottleneck. Well, I've only got 5 stations, so I'm only sanding 5 tables. So my solution is I have to get a different hour program. So we're working, maybe we're adding a second shift. Maybe we're doing a swing shift where I've got 5 sanding tables, but I can do 7 sanders because 2 of them come in 4 hours later and work on, my CNC machine for a few hours while somebody's on the table. And then they go over and sand later, working out another vacuum system, a manual vacuum system where we're vacuuming literally sawdust into a shop vac to put a 6th table on. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but in manufacturing, you run into physical bottlenecks of there's only so much space, there's only so much equipment. No matter how many people you have, you're at the mercy of what you've already invested in.
Gotcha. I've covered some of the bottlenecks. Any other ones before we move on to what has worked well? And I'm looking towards things like our food for thought. What are you doing with social media? Other within your tech stack, are you using social media? Things like that.
Yeah. So one of the things that's worked really well for us, and I'm not really giving away any trade secrets here, are trade shows. So our sales team's incredible. We built a very high powered sales organization. Anthony Chaffin's our vice president of sales, and he's really got a great strategy into how we're going to break into these big brands. So he's got a few people on his staff, but most of the groundwork that they lay, what he calls marketing, I wouldn't call it marketing, but what he calls marketing is going to trade shows. So we do a couple of restaurant point shows. We're getting into another show called Restaurant Spaces. We've got another person on his team that goes to architecture and design shows all over the country. She was in Washington, D.C. not 2 weeks ago, doing another trade show where we get in front of supply chain and purchasing and some designers. And we get a 20-minute presentation at Restaurant Point where we've got slides, we've got a pitch deck, we're presenting, this is who we are, this is what we can do. And what we do, Anthony's strategy is impeccable. His strategy is white pages. Hey, have you ever had trouble with a one-stop shop consolidator front of house? Well, let me tell you about our Qdoba store. We do their millwork, we do their chairs, we do their tables. We're not artists, but we consolidate the artwork that goes on their walls too. If you ever needed somebody like that, well, we can do that. And then, hey, let me tell you about this unique bird call. They want this wraparound booth. Well, we got our engineer in and he was able to design this, and we were able to basically take round tabletops and cut them in half and round off this booth. And it was a perfect fit, right? So we're doing this white paper, been there, done that strategy. But the best part about those trade shows is you're getting in front of the decision makers. You're getting in front of the supply chain, the sourcing, the purchasing, and the designers. So they're seeing everything that we can do. And then a cool thing about that show is in the morning, we're doing the pitch. In the afternoon, we get one-on-ones with executives, with brands that we pick out, or brands can pick to meet with us, which is a really cool opportunity where we're getting, people will come in. And actually, this happened in October at this show. We had a smaller brand, what we call an emerging brand, came into our show and said, man, your presentation was awesome. You guys are great. Really like your stuff. I just don't think I can afford to work with you. We said, oh, really? Well, did you know that we're 100% American made in Northern Ohio? And I'll bet that we can beat your laminate tabletop supplier right now in pricing, 1 for 1. They're like, really? There's no way. We show them our pricing and they're like, man, we can't afford to buy a high quality product from, a reputable source that has a world-class client experience. We didn't know that. So we get that opportunity where, just you or I looking on the internet at our website, you might think, oh, these guys are making Starbucks tables. I can't afford it. I can't even afford to buy their coffee, let alone buy their tables. And then but at a trade show, you get to talk to the person and you get to talk to the account rep and they get to tell you their story. So it's a really amazing position that Anthony's put us in to get in front of the decision makers. So what I don't have to do is pay tens of thousands of dollars to put out Google ads to market to, a teacher in Boston.
Yeah, that's not a big buyer right there.
Exactly. But everybody that we market to when we go to these trade shows are buyers, which is spectacular ROI.
Yeah, one thing I've always thought about trade shows is it's worth the investment. It may be a little bit more in time at different times, but the people that go there spent money to go there. So
Mhm.
they're highly engaged, they're ready to talk. It isn't like a cold call or anything like that. They want the information, they're going to the workshops, etc.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm for us.
I got you. I'll go back to my other part here. Man, you and I have actually stayed in line with these line of questions. It usually doesn't happen. We're over. What else is what in this niche? Where is the marketing gone, and where has it changed from? What I
Hmm.
mean by that is, so many people will talk about up to the pandemic, since the pandemic, and then they struggle with the future.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So for us, because most of our client base is in the restaurant market or in the restaurant industry,
Mhm.
COVID had a major impact where you couldn't go into a store. Well, the problem for us is we sell furniture. So if restaurants don't need furniture because everybody's just doing drive-through, DoorDash, or Uber Eats,
Mhm.
they don't really need tables and chairs. So what we're seeing is, especially in the quick service world. So if you think of like what used to be called fast food, those stores are getting smaller and now they're putting in dual drive-through lanes, or they're putting drive-through lanes on both sides of the building. They're not driving people into the dining room. So what we have to do is we have to get a little bit more competitive in point of sale counter, which is what we call millwork in this industry. And that is, there are people that are like the DoorDasher isn't going through the drive-through every time. They might park and run inside. So I'm going to build a pickup shelf so that they don't have to deal with it. that less labor for them. I'm trying to save them money other places. So I can't save them money in their furniture, but I can save them money in labor by building a pickup shelf that they don't have to interact with the DoorDash or the Uber Eats. They just got to print the receipt and staple it to the back. So that's one thing that we've done. But as that industry is shrinking, the flip side is what we call family dining. So these are going to be a server comes to your table, they take your order, they go back to the kitchen, they bring back, your beverage, your bread basket, and then a little while later, they bring back your food. That part of the industry is actually expanding. So they're building bigger dining rooms. Think of like a Buffalo Wild Wings. They want people to stay in their dining room to watch an entire football game or an entire day of March Madness. So they want comfortable seating. They want nice big tables. They want a really sturdy bar. So that's a new niche that we're going after is quick service. While the industry is fine, the dining room is shrinking. So we're going to go after the dining rooms that are expanding. But
That really provide an experience where
exactly,
people sit and stay for a while.
exactly.
Well, I've been to many B-dubs, Buffalo Wild Wings,
Yep.
too many.
It's good
I
stuff.
travel usually 25 to 30 weeks out of the year on top of living in an RV. Yeah, sorry. Not to digress too far there.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of travel. That's more than my wife would let me do.
But yeah, well, we don't have kids. We got a dog. That's about it. And between moving the house every 3 months, getting on a plane about every week, it's all good. Hey, American Airlines loves me. But anyways, and then when my wife does travel with us, they like treat us like ballers. So it's all good.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
I get some good give and take a little bit there. Network opportunities you've experienced. You know where this is going. We don't even have to get too much into this because it's more speaking to where I want this podcast to go.
Hmm.
Um, and I already like you, so I'll probably be asking you to come on and again, and it'll probably be when there's other supply chain folks on the call just to start creating a network of people
Yeah,
because often the supply chain folks are really good in their specialty. Like I had a guy, Don, that's in the last mile delivery yesterday. And his point was he's good at the bulky item last mile stuff with retailers from the retailer to the house. But he's like, I don't talk to anybody up the supply chain. They may have some great ideas. So he's
yeah,
like, I'm in on that. So
yeah. That's actually a piece of the puzzle that I've worked in before, but that we struggle in is transportation. Transportation is very difficult. There's a shortage of truck drivers. You have parts of the country going to automated or whatever they call them, like a robotic driving truck. It's a difficult world to get into. And one of the things that we hear from our clients all the time is, can you do anything in freight? Freight's expensive. Can you, split the freight with me? Those kind of things, because there's just so much money in it. And a lot of it is because they can't find drivers.
that's very true. I spent 6 years at Newbreed/XPO supply chain. And
Yeah.
a big part of XPO is the trucking business. And that wasn't my piece, but I know so many people that were there and now have branched out to all types of transportation companies. And yeah, they all talk about that. When we sit around and drink beer, they're all talking about how do I get drivers
Yeah. Well, and
and
for us,
onboard them.
like I said, we buy wood, but we kind of try to keep with wood we're in Ohio. So we try to buy from Superior Hardwoods of Ohio, which is, as you might have guessed, in Ohio. And it saves us on transportation costs. To buy white oak from Southern Ohio, red oak from Southern Ohio is now I've shrunk the amount of lumber that's available to me because of transportation costs. Now I can go get white oak from North Carolina or Missouri. I just have to eat the margin because I'm trucking it in for $3,000, where out of Southern Ohio it's $800. So that, yeah, if they could figure out a way to make transportation cheaper or more efficient, I'd love to talk to people about that.
Yeah, I can tell you that because of being all around. My other business is a program manager in IT, but distribution centers and folks like Manhattan, JDA, et cetera, have so much AI based in their systems now. The optimization and the freight broker tied with the freight brokerage business is the great conversation to have. I'll bring you in on those conversations or at least reach out to you to see, and I'll let you know who's involved in it because there's some brilliant minds that I talk to. Sometimes they go on a little too long and I'm just like, dude, I'm just a podcast host.
Yeah.
Anyways, brilliant minds there. So let's go ahead and start landing the plane here. What other things would you like our audience to know about your business or you or your market, excuse me, your industry and where it's going? There's always some little thing that irritates you or you're overly proud of.
Yeah, I think for CrowWorks, one of the things that we have a lot of pride in is our service. So you don't think about manufacturing companies as having great customer service, but that's one of the biggest efforts in our business is making sure that every client is satisfied. We've got an, very high retention of our clients. We get back to them within 24 hours. We have a dedicated staff that focuses on clients. And we're roll up your sleeves, throwing boards through a saw manufacturing company. So a lot of times, companies will work through a broker or manufacturing companies or they're working through a middleman to get into a retail store or something like that. We don't do that. We have a sales team. We've got customer service on site. And I guess this is maybe a little bit counter to what we talked about a minute ago, but when you go on our website, you don't get an AI chatbot. You get Ray Blankemeyer. She responds. You get Brooke, you get Grace, you get Megan. You're getting one of the people that are sitting right outside the store right now. They're the people that respond to you when you send an email to service@crowworks.com. We've got real people in that world because we care so much about our clients and we want to make sure that they have a good experience. For
So
me
I got to ask this
personally,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I got to ask
I
this
I
question
say
because
for me personally, that's
it's,
super, super prideful.
well, that's where I was going to go. Is it because you're a little bit smaller company or you're from the Midwest? Because every time I work with freaking people in the Midwest, and I may be a little biased, I was born in Rochester, Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic. But in fact, I had to go get the frame work done on the house here, the RV. So I was up in Elkhart. And every time I go to Elkhart, they're just damn good people. It's the
Yeah.
culture. I don't know if it's our parenting that made it all work, or we're just ridiculously wound into our DNA to be helpful and prideful in that, or is
I
it
think
being a small company? Go ahead.
I think those two things are the same thing. Most of the Midwest is small towns. We have a small town feel at our company. Everybody knows everybody. We know everybody's kids. We have a big party in September every year where you bring the whole family. We invite our clients, we invite our suppliers, and we invite them to bring their families. And we meet the guy who supplies lumber for me in Portsmouth, Ohio, brings his wife. The guy who gave me a loan to buy the property brings his kids. And, the director of supply chain brought his pregnant wife and their two kids or their kid, their second one's on the way, brought
Nice.
them to the party. And it's just, we have that small town feel. And I think for us, we're very relationship based. So to build client relationships with some of these massive brands, we don't want to be somebody that they can say, I got to save 5% this year. It's on my KPI is to save 5%. What can I do? Well, let's just get rid of CrowWorks and go to cheap laminate garbage table. No, they say, no, I know Megan. I'm going to call her and see if she can save me 5%. And that's important for us to say, we built the relationship and we build a perfect client experience, a world-class client experience because it's part of our brand. But you may be right. We might have learned that by our upbringing here in the Midwest.
Yeah, it is what it is. I always know it when I talk to somebody. I'm always like, dude, are you from the Midwest? because it's feeling it. I'm feeling it, and I don't mind talking about it. It's just one of those things. All right. Well, I tell you, I really appreciate the time. I think you've added some good value to this podcast for our audience, and we'll continue that.
Yeah, that sounds great, Teddy. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeff. And to the audience, thank you for your time. Hopefully you watch to the end. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Thanks, Jeff.
You're listening to Supply Chain Unlocked. Get exclusive insights from industry leaders on overcoming challenges, mastering logistics, and scaling your business with precision. Brought to you by X7 AI.